We just got ourselves a new bombshell report that just came out, and this report is saying that 64% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And I did want to go ahead and talk about this in today's video because, again, to me, this speaks to a huge lack of financial literacy that we have in this country. Now, obviously, we have several pandemics. It wasn't just the coronavirus pandemic. You've got the obesity pandemic. People aren't taking care of their health. And then you got all these other, pandemics. But one of the main pandemics that we need to talk about desperately is the lack of financial literacy. And in my personal opinion, this is one of the main reasons why so many people are living paycheck to paycheck. There may even be some of you who are watching my channel right now who are living paycheck to paycheck. And I want to go ahead and give some tips and just kind of talk a little bit about why I believe that this is happening. So I want to start off right here. It says 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And I know we see these types of headlines every year. 50% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Certain amount of Americans don't even have $1,000 in their bank account, blah, blah, blah. We see these things every year. But what the scary thing is about this is when you look here, it says that the share of Americans who say they live paycheck to paycheck climbed last year. Because this study that they're looking at is showing for the end of 2022, just FYI. But it's worrisome because the amount of people who are living paycheck to paycheck and are struggling financially keeps climbing every single year. And I know the people in politics are going to say, oh, it's the government's fault. It's this person's fault. This is the reason why this is happening and life is unfair and blah, blah, blah. But the God honest truth is, more than likely, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's probably your fault. See, let me go ahead and tell you a story, okay? So as of right now, I do not live paycheck to paycheck, thank God. But however, there were certain times in my life where I did. And every single time in my life that I lived paycheck to paycheck, which was in my early 20s, was mainly because I made bad financial decisions. I was living above my means, and that is why I wasn't able to put a certain amount of money away. Even though at that time I wasn't making much money, I also wasn't saving much money either. I was spending a lot of money. And I think that's one of the main issues of why so many people live paycheck to paycheck. I mean, for crying out loud, a lot of people that I follow on social media, they have a $700 car note, okay? They go traveling like once every 2 months. They're always somewhere. They're either in Miami, Dominican Republic, Hawaii. They're always somewhere. And I'm just looking at them like, where are you people getting this money from? And it's like, I know you don't make that much. So we have a spending problem in this country. A lot of Americans aren't taught good financial habits. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans have bad financial habits. And the other thing that really amazed me, guys, is I don't know if this article has it, but there was something I saw where they said that people who make over 100, it was something like, yeah, here it is right here. That's an increase of 3 percentage points, blah, blah, blah. Oh, let me talk about this right here first. 64% of U.S. consumers, equivalent to 166 million people. Remember, guys, there's like 300 million plus people in this country. Way more than half of that, 166 million people, are living paycheck to paycheck. That is absolutely insane. And it says right here, that's an increase of 3 percentage points from a year earlier. And then it says, and out of that group, some 8 million people were earning more than $100,000 per year. So there are 8 million people in this country who make $100,000 per year. And they are still living paycheck to paycheck. And I know some of you guys are going to say, well, those people probably live in New York or California. Yeah, maybe they do. But I know for me, if I was making $100,000 a year and I still was living paycheck to paycheck, and the only reason why I'm living paycheck to paycheck is because I live in an area that's just ridiculously expensive, I would just move. Like, that's one way to solve your problems. But even if you live in an expensive area, I still think that there's no way you should be making $100,000 and you're living paycheck to paycheck. Now, again, I could be wrong. I've never lived in New York or California, so what do I know? But what I will say is if I'm making a bunch of money and I'm still living paycheck to paycheck, I'm freaking moving. Because I can tell you right now, if you're making $100K in Chicago, you'll be fine. There's plenty of decent, you don't have to live downtown where the rent's like $4,000 a month. You can live up north or somewhere decent in Chicago, some of the decent little neighborhoods, and you can make a pretty good life for yourself, have a pretty good living with $100,000. So I just think that that's absolutely insane. But yeah, folks, I really think, oh, the other part that I think they're leaving out too, I don't know if they talked about this, but a lot of people, I don't know if you guys know this, ever since the pandemic, a lot of young adults are living with their parents now. Like I'm not talking 23, 24, because when I was 22, 23, 24, I was living with my parents too. I'm talking like 29, 30. Like it's people like that age that are still living with their parents. And it's crazy because even those people are living paycheck to paycheck. And it's like, there's really no excuse for you. You live with your parents. You should be saving as much money as you can because you're not paying rent. You're not paying heat bill, electricity, all the different things you got to pay, internet, all the different stuff you got to pay when you have an apartment and live by yourself like I do. Like I got to pay everything. Heat, electric, ComEd, every water, sewer, everything, man. Rent, you got to pay everything. And so I think it's even crazier just given the fact that a lot of people who are living paycheck to paycheck actually live with their parents. And again, that speaks to your spending habits. If you're literally living with your parents and your parents are paying the rent and you still don't have any money, that means you're making a big mistake. You either have an income problem, you're just making like minimum wage, and we could talk about that. That might be your problem right there. Or you're just really bad with money. I'd be willing to bet chances are you're probably just bad with money. And I think that's one of the main issues. But if you are living like working minimum wage or whatever, there's different things that I would recommend that you could do to get yourself out of there. You might want to go back to school or go to school so you get some type of degree. If you don't think that college is for you or school is for you, then you could always pick up a trade. You could become a firefighter. You can go to like barber school or so. You know, there's so many options out there that you could do besides college if you really look. You know, you can go to culinary school and be a cook. You could do all kinds of stuff that pay more than minimum wage. It's just a factor of whether you want to do it or not. Because this is my honest to God opinion, and I don't want to offend anybody, but in my opinion, I think majority of people, if you're not disabled or whatever, I think a lot of people who work minimum wage are, well, I don't want to say it like this. I think some people who work minimum wage are probably lazy. That's what I honestly think. And the reason why I think this is just from personal experience here, because there are people that I know who work jobs where they only make minimum wage. And whenever I give them other options that where they can start making money immediately, they never listen to me. Like I always tell them, like, you can work for the post office right now and make more money. Why don't you just apply? They don't want to do it. You could be a firefighter. You could be a police officer. You could literally go to the academy and become one of those things. You could literally go to trade school and become a handyman. You know, you could become a carpenter. You go to school and learn how to fix cars. There's so many different options and careers out there where you don't have to go to college to get a 4-year degree. But guess what happens when I tell some of these people I know that are working minimum wage that? They just ignore it. They're like, oh, yeah, man, sounds great, whatever. And they never do it. And then they end up working at McDonald's for the next 15 years. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody. You know, I'm not, nothing like that. I'm just saying, I'm just giving a reason of why I think that this is happening. And the reason why I'm saying this, because I know in the political world, a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's the politician's fault. It's this person's fault. You know, they need to raise minimum wage, blah, 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 which I actually don't agree with, by the way. But I just honestly think that if more people took the initiative to better their lives, they could easily do it. Because let's be honest, folks, working minimum wage is the bottom of the bottom. Like when I was in high school, I was working minimum wage. Like that's the bottom of the bottom. Those are jobs that high schoolers are typically working. So if you're a grown person working minimum wage, that means there's some mistakes that you've made in your life. Now, again, we're not including the fact that some people work those jobs might be disabled or have some type of issues. That's a different thing. I'm just talking about perfectly regular people who can easily get their butts up and work and are probably just too lazy to do it. So they just settle for whatever they're comfortable with. They refuse to get out of their comfort zone. Those are the kind of people that I'm talking about because like I said, I know people personally and I tell them every freaking week, hey, you know, if you're not making enough money working at McDonald's, you know, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this, and it doesn't take much. All you do is fill out an application. Boom, you're making $18, $19 an hour. For crying out loud, you can work at Amazon to make $18 an hour. Like, that's more than minimum wage. Like, you know, it's just, there's always options, man. So, yeah, that's just my whole spiel with it. I really do think that it's mostly people's fault that they are in this financial position. And like I said, I can only use myself as an example because I know what happened with me. I can't talk too much about other people's situation, but I can just speak for me. It wasn't until I really got focused and I actually got a spreadsheet and created a budget for myself that I was actually able to put a lot more money away. And also, my car note before this car note was much more expensive. And thankfully, because of the pandemic, used car prices went up. So I was able to sell that car and actually make a profit from that because of the ridiculous prices that used cars were at. So I sold my car, my used car, that was, you know, it was okay. It was cool, but it just, I sold it for more than what it was worth. Let's put it that way. And so because I sold it for more than what it was worth, I was able to get a much cheaper car. And because I got that much cheaper car, I got a significantly cheaper car note. And yeah, that's like I said. So All right, I think that's it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck because that's just absolutely insane. And yeah, those are just my opinions. I think that there are definitely a lot of things that you could do to get yourself out of being paycheck to paycheck. Like I said, I think one of the main issues is people live above their means way too much. When in reality, you should be living below your means. So if living below your means that you got to live in a $900 apartment, and guess what? That's what you got to do. If you can't afford a $1,500 apartment, you can't afford it. You need to live below your means and live in a situation that's economically sound for you, that makes freaking sense. You know, you shouldn't be living in a super nice downtown apartment if you're only making $35,000 a year. You know what I mean? But there's so many people in America who do that, and then they wonder why they're paycheck to paycheck. Typically, it's because of the bad decisions that they make. So, all right, guys, that'll go ahead and conclude today's video. Hopefully, you guys got something out of this. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.